pyramids, sand, cats, crocodiles. It's Egypt. What's there not to love? Egypt is fascinating. It always has been, it always will be. Egypt is just incredible. We cannot do it enough justice. I could spend an entire year on it and just scratch the surface. But I'm going to spare you the details on that. We're just going to hit the broad strokes. Now, Egypt can be a little bit confusing at times because up is down and down is up. Yeah, look at the Nile River. It dominates Egypt, right? It's a river flowing through a desert. Big surprise. However, Upper Egypt is on the bottom and Lower Egypt is on the top because water flows downhill. Now, the kickoff date for ancient Egypt is circa 3100 BC. Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt are united by a guy named Menes, or Narmer, depending how you read the hieroglyphics, sacred carvings, hieroglyphics. It's amazing what kind of pronunciation problems you get off the same language sometimes. That date's a little bit confusing because if both of those societies are already well organized, and it's 3100 BC, and civilization will start in 3500 BC in Mesopotamia, it'll lead to some interesting questions. But let's stick with 3100 BC for right now. If you ever look at the crown of the pharaohs of Egypt, you see both red and white. It symbolizes both countries. So if you have one crown, they've been united. Now, we organize ancient Egyptian history into the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and New Kingdom. You don't have to memorize those numbers because if you do, you're going to have more numbers rolling around in your head than a Steeler box score. But hey, if you need to, write them down. Now, if you notice, you got a few gaps in there as well, right? Those gaps are periods of instability. Once again, that's not something they were aware of back then. Pharaoh Khafre didn't wake up in 2500 BC and say, I'm living in the Old Kingdom. Now, somewhere around 1700 BC, the Hyksos show up. They come galloping out of the Sinai on chariots. Since Egypt is so isolated from everybody, they have no natural predators. So the Hyksos show up and take the country over pretty easily. After about a century or so, the Hyksos get absorbed, they marry all the local women, and they become good Egyptians like everybody else. So New Kingdom Egypt actually goes out after everybody to avoid being taken over, right? They end up with some really big wars with the Hittites. We met them already. It's World War I of the ancient world in the 1200s BC. And the Egyptians at the time are led by the most famous pharaoh of all. His name? Ramesses II, 1279 BC to 1213 BC. He's actually mentioned in the Bible as being the pharaoh that the Jews escaped from, but Moses got out of there in 1200 BC. So that means Ramesses has been dead for 13 years. See the problem? I guess it's easy to escape a guy who's been dead for 13 years. Another famous pharaoh is King Tutankhamun, or King Tut. He lived in 1332 BC and died in 1323 BC. Why is he so famous? Well, when he was around, no one really knew him. He became famous after he died, i.e. 1922 AD when they found his tomb. His tomb was totally intact. No grave robbers had found it in thousands of years. Because of King Tut, that's how we know everything we really know about ancient Egypt, all because of that. Meanwhile, King Tut's curse, affected a few people. So if you ever go into a pharaoh's tomb, do so with great humility and respect. A little tip here from your friend, Mr. H. Actor, actress, waiter, waitress. In English, we have genders for people's occupation. Egypt, 3,000 years, we only had 3 confirmed female pharaohs. They never bothered with a female version of it. There might be 6 or 7, depending who you talk to, but 3 definite confirmed ones. One you probably never heard of until now. Her name? Hatshepsut. She ruled in the 1400s BC as a regent for her son. Then they tried to scratch her name out of everything. I guess they weren't very grateful. Nefertiti's another one. She ruled sometime after Ramesses. Her dates kind of get mixed up sometimes. And everybody's heard of Cleopatra. She's the last one. She brings the curtain down on everything in 30 BC. Egypt is just an endlessly fascinating place. They eventually end up on the trade routes of every place, and all of Egyptian culture ends up spreading all over the place, becoming a basis for a lot of other cultures. So Egyptian religion has a god for everything. Polytheistic. Poly, many, theos, gods. I'm not sure how you would say buttload of many gods in Greek, but you get the point. There's a ton of gods, a god for everything. God of the crocodiles, God for the river, God for cats, God of the sun. Big surprise, it's a desert. And since Egypt is in contact with everybody in the Eastern Med, Every single ancient religion you're going to find is going to follow that same template. And that's the way it's going to be in the ancient world until that Christianity thing comes through, followed by Islam, the flying spaghetti monster, and everything else that comes and goes. But regardless of what comes and goes, the pyramids are still going to be there. Don't forget to check back for more episodes of History Rescue. In the meantime, if you have a question about history, leave it down in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.